Dentata, 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 dentata.
Is that
Is
straight
that from the musical?
Straight from the musical's mouth, baby.
Oh, shit.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie,
And Nikisha.
where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Well, welcome everyone.
Welcome.
Dentata, 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 dentata.
Is that straight
Is that from the musical?
Straight from the musical's mouth, baby.
Oh, shit. Oh my god. Oh my god.
So exciting because today we are talking about the 2007, happy graduation, comedy horror film Teeth.
The toothed vagina appears in the mythology of many and diverse cultures all over the world. In these myths, the story is always the same. The hero must do battle with the woman, the toothed creature, and break her power.
As we go on, we get dentata.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one, guys. If you haven't already guessed it. So the movie Teeth was directed and written by Michael Lichtenstein, and it stars Jess Weixler, John Hensley, Josh Pace, Hale Appleman, Ashley Springer, and Lenny Von Dolan. Now, heavy spoilers if you have not seen Teeth. It is now currently streaming on Amazon Prime. So if you want to get into that, press pause, watch it, which I think you should. Pause. And then come back and listen to how we feel about it. Maybe you agree with us, maybe you don't. But just listen and see. And Jamie, please hit us with those trigger warnings because there's a lot.
Yeah.
This is the number one trigger warning movie maybe we've ever watched.
Yeah.
Yes. This movie, the main theme is around sexual assault. So that is your trigger warning, content warning, around sexual assault. That comes up several times as a theme in this movie. There's also like a lot of references to vaginal sex, anal sex, oral sex, Christianity, abstinence, purity rings, and then lots of severed peni.
And crabs on dicks.
And crabs on dicks.
And dicks being eaten.
Oh, yeah.
Dicks being eaten.
Dog food dicks.
Dog
food dicks.
Yeah. That's it. Also, the mom has cancer? Question mark?
The mom has something that she's dying from that we don't fully know what it. I don't think they ever explicitly say. They just say she's sick.
Yeah, and with the smokestacks in the background, I think we're just supposed to believe that it's cancer and that's how the dentata formed and all that stuff. Is my guess.
Like a mutation.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So she's one of the X-Men. Got it.
Yeah. If there was an X person named Dentata and like a Venus flytrap came out or something like that, that would be insane.
Oh, somebody write this down. Absolutely, yes.
Dentata X-Men. I love it.
Fantastic. Well, before we get into everything that is Teeth, Producer Brian, please give us some words.
Hi, everybody. Producer Brian here. I am letting you know that we are on social media at Talk Horror Pod. We are back on TikTok for as long as it lasts. And, of course, we are on Instagram. Check us out in those two places. We're also on Blue Sky. I have never posted anything, but you can follow us there at Talk Horror Pod. Check us out in all those places. We're doing some fun stuff. So if you've never followed us or listened to us before, we do other lists. We do other fun things. We review other movies on social media outside of what we're doing here. So definitely check us out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Love it. Here for it. All right. Well, have you guys watched anything new this week? Any new trailers?
Okay, so
Oh no.
I watched no new trailers. I'm trying to avoid trailers as we've
Oh,
discussed.
right.
However,
there was the teaser.
yes, however, I saw a commercial for the trailer coming out of Sinners. I'm not going to watch the full trailer. I've already seen the teaser trailer. Again, that's where I'm stopping.
Mhm.
But I was very excited from just the commercial for the trailer for Sinners. So I'm just like super excited about that.
Nice.
However, Jamie and I, so the Oscar nominations came out. Let's talk about that a little bit. The Substance is now officially the 7th
Yay!
horror movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture. 8 if you include The Shape of Water. But yeah, so that's really exciting. It got a Best Director nod, Picture nod, hair and makeup, screenplay. I think, did I say actress? I really hope it wins one. I think it has a shot. I think it has legitimate shots to actress, screenplay, and director. I really do. But we'll see what happens. But the cool thing is what Jamie and I do, and you can check out my Letterboxd. Again, follow me on Letterboxd at Nutty Professor. It's in the description. You can also follow Jamie and email support Jamie on Letterboxd. It's in the description of this episode. But when the Oscar nominations come out, we really try and watch all 10 nominees, and we watch as many of the like acting performances or screenplay nominations that weren't nominated for Best Picture. So for instance, this year we're going to watch the 10. I'd like to watch A Real Pain, maybe September 5, things that are not nominated for Best Picture. Anyway, we have watched now. I have seen 4 of the 10. Jamie has seen 3 of the 10. The goal is for both of us to see all 10. But the reason I, put this whole little prologue on it is this week we watched one of the 10. We watched Emilia Pérez.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say it. Please tell me.
Did you see it?
No, but I've just been seeing the comparisons with it and Wicked, and that only one song that they keep playing about penis to vagina. That's
I guess it's fitting for what we're talking about today. But no. Just the word vagina.
It's the only similarity.
Yes. I hated this movie.
Yeah.
Emilia Pérez is in one of my least favorite films I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
Oh my god.
And
it was bad.
It's really bad. It doesn't justify itself to be a musical at any point. And then even if you take the songs out, the story is just so clumsily done. Representation aside, let's even just out of this conversation about like the film as itself, if you just remove representation aside, it's just a poorly developed narrative. And if you have songs and music in a musical, they should tell you more about the characters, and it just does not. They basically just musicalize scenes. Anyway, we can get into that. That's not what this is about, but I just want to say that I hated it. And if I had seen this movie, this is what I'll say about Emilia Pérez. If I had seen this movie, if I had heard it came out now, and I'd seen it in 5 years, like 5 years from now, I'm like, I guess I'll watch this thing. I think I would have had an entertaining time watching it, because it would have been this cult movie that like people like either hate or love, very similar to Repo, like where like people either like are really into it because it's so campy and stupid, or like, but the fact that it is surrounded by these 13 Oscar nominations, Golden Globe nominations, and I watched it and I'm just like, I don't understand. I know art is subjective. I do not understand how I watched the same movie that the Academy voters watched.
Yes.
Mind-boggling, mind-blowing. The second half of the movie, we looked if we could watch it on 1.5 speed. We could not. But because we wanted to finish it and just get it out of the way, because we got to watch all 10. And then Jamie and I just started reading letterbox reviews for the second half of the movie that made us laugh. But like, you know, do I think Zoe Saldana is pretty good in it? Totally. Do I think that do I think that a lot of the performances are good in it? I do. I think the screenplay and the direction is the problem. The one performance that is actually really bad in the movie is
Selena Gomez.
Selena Gomez.
Damn.
I think that the lead who got nominated is good. I think that Zoe Saldana is very good. I have no qualms with what they were doing work-wise. I have qualms with the screenplay. I have just there's so much. I just could not have a good time watching this movie for many different reasons. But
yeah,
I'll stop there. It was awful.
I mean, I've heard all the same things, but like I said, I've only seen the musical comparisons, and someone did a whole video about like how it just incorrectly scans with like how syllables and things line up and how people talk.
Awful.
And how it's like it doesn't seem like it is made by someone who was musically inclined to like.
It's not. It's made by a French cis man who doesn't understand the Mexican culture, Spanish, the trans experience, none of the sorry, okay, and I'm gonna stop now. We're done. Not that, and I'm not saying that you cannot make a movie about something you don't fully are not immersed in. That's not what I'm saying. Right. But you have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do the work.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's don't. So let's talk about Teeth.
I was so mad watching this movie. I was like, you know, this is what we're doing with the few moments of free time that we have. I'm so deeply.
Yeah. That's totally. I'm very much looking forward to the other. What do we have? 6 left. I'm because there's a lot in there that I really want to see that we just have not seen yet.
I love that. I'm glad that y'all are going through that. Aaron Albano is doing the same thing, and he's like taking suggestions on what to watch.
We do that every year,
Yeah, but after he watched The Substance, he like texted me and was like, "What did I just watch?" Thumbs up. But he like loved it all at the same time. But he was like, "That was super intense." I'm like, "And look at you watching a horror movie by yourself at night." But yes, speaking on horror movie watching, I did watch We're All Going to the World's Fair, which is the same director.
Oh, nice. Jane
Schoenbrunn.
Yeah.
And like this director just does such a great job. And I was talking to Brian this before we started recording of like really immersing us in the world of how we grew up as millennials and like internet as millennials, and I think just how their direction is. It feels, and we talked about this with I Saw the TV Glow, because it kind of just feels like a whole music video in a sense, with just like how great the music adds to the scenes and what's happening. But also with this one in particular, it was more like found footagey, like if everything was recorded on like a camera, and I think it just adds to the environment. But it really is just like a take on how isolating the internet can feel and how we interact from a screen as opposed to like how we interact in real life, and just those differences and the people that we come in contact with like via the internet. And I just thought it was really well done. Like I just love watching their stuff. Like it's just so aesthetically pleasing to me, and it's not necessarily scary. I think I Saw the TV Globe was a little bit scarier, but I think there was such good tension building in this one that's what makes it quote unquote scary, even though there isn't a jump scare in sight. But just how they create tension in it is just so it was really good to watch. So.
That's interesting. If you enjoyed those themes in that one, you should definitely watch Red Rooms.
Okay, yeah I'll put it on my list.
Cool. It's on Shudder now, not sponsored.
But hopefully,
but Shudder, we're here for you.
Right. Yeah, I think it's just because of what age we are in right now, and also just with the world being the world, anything that we can cling on to that reminds us of something safe in a sense, or of something, or of childhood.
I don't know what you're talking about. If you,
What's going on?
yeah, I'm just like,
Nothing.
Says the guy who got into Pokemon and doesn't even have any nostalgia for it.
that's fair. That's
Yikes.
true. That's true. It's
Love
fun.
that.
It
That's
is fun.
Yeah. But Red Rim, okay, I'll put that on my list to watch.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys are here for Teeth, and I cannot wait to talk about it and hear everyone's thoughts on it. But we need a plot summary, and producer Brian's the one that's going to give it to us, a 2-minute plot summary of Teeth.
What's the plot?
2
Okay.
minutes.
I'm gonna do my darndest.
You got it.
You sure will. All right. For some reason, none of these are 2-minute timers. All right. Not 22 minutes, 2 minutes is how much time you have.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Ready, steady, go.
Okay, Dawn is our main character. She is the spokesperson, of a abstinence religious community, essentially a group. Abstinence, abstinence. And so she is very religious, committed to that. She starts to hang out with this other religious boy named Toby. They hang out as a group, but then her and Toby break off. They go to a swimming hole, and then they start to kiss. They decide to kind of maybe go a little bit further. Anyway, she says no. She ends up banging her head because Toby is aggressive. She gets conked out. Long story short, he begins to sexually assault her. As she's coming to, her vagina activates, the vagina dentata activates, and basically rips his penis off, and then he disappears, falls into the water. She's freaked out by this. She doesn't know what to do. She ends up going back and seeing that the penis is still there. This is all real. She ends up going to a gynecologist to check it out. He's a creep. He assaults her. The vagina chews off 4 of his fingers, and then she ends up finding this other boy from her group. She has sex with him, so he ends up comforting her. He basically gives her like relaxers. They end up having sex. She agrees to it after already being relaxed. It's a very gray situation. Everything is okay because she wants it. Then later on, he admits that there was a bet if he could bed her, and then she cuts his dick off with hers. Anyway, she also has a stepbrother. Her mom is dying of cancer. She finds out that her mom has died from cancer. Her brother could have saved the mom or at least get her help. Anyway, the stepbrother, who's in love with her, decides she has sex with him to make sure that he cuts his dick off. He gets cut off. It's eaten by the dog. Then she goes away. She decides to get out of Dodge, and she's picked up by a creeper, and she decides that she's gonna cut his dick off too, and kind of like be this like vagina dentata vigilante. The end.
And that's the plot.
Vagina dentata vigilante. I love that phrase. Also, just like vagina activate. Like, yes. Gorgeous. So that is Teeth. So let's get into our thoughts with our first segment, Trick or a Treat, where we let you know if this was a trick, we hated it, or we don't know how we feel about it, and it was a treat, we loved it.
Trick. Treat.
So, Brian, since this was your first time watching this, yes?
Yeah, first time ever. I thought I had seen it, but I had not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how did you feel about it?
100% treat.
Yeah. What about you, Jamie?
Treat.
Yeah, treat for me. Treats all around for everyone.
Great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible movie. So let's get into details about why we thought this was a treat in likes and gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
And of course, Brian, you have to go first since this is your first time watching it.
Okay. I think this movie is great. I really enjoyed the Seed of Chucky intro. With all of the sperm and all of that stuff.
Yes.
I thought that from a director standpoint, even though it's a little shoddily made, I never felt like it was low budget, because I think that the imagery, the way that he frames everything is really interesting. Whether it's the tree hollow or the caves or the snapping turtle, all these like vagina dentata imagery, I think really adds to the fabric of what this director is creating here. Something that I really like about this movie is that the stepfather is a good guy. I immediately assumed that like the stepfather and the stepbrother were going to be like these two garbage people, and while one was, it wasn't the stepfather, and he cared about his family. He took on Dawn as a real daughter, and I just like really appreciated that a lot. This movie also has one of my favorite horror movie tropes of all time, the classroom scene that lays out the themes of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely thought that was wonderful. Love that stuff. I just like I just really thought this movie nailed a lot of things. Whether it was just, it did such a good job of showing kids being kids with religion stopping them. Like I thought the internal turmoil that a lot of these kids had before, like even before we learn about the vagina dentata, even before we learn about, also this is a wild twist if you don't know what this movie is about.
Absolutely,
because they don't talk about vagina dentata at all until like halfway, maybe 3-4. Like if you're just like, let's watch a movie called like, I mean the title gives away a little bit all that, but like what a wild twist if you don't know anything about this movie.
Yes.
I feel like it's hard to not know anything about this movie.
Yeah.
Just like in that vein, only because like I saw this movie when it came out, not to like jump the gun and share anything, but like
go.
more
Go
so
for it.
just like as soon as it came out, everyone knew what the twist, if you will, was.
Sure.
So I feel like it's really hard to go into this with like nothing, unless you truly are like very far removed from the internet. But I am curious, like if you're out there and you hear the name Teeth and you don't think about this movie and you've never seen it, like I would love to get you to watch this movie and then talk to you about this.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, what I like about this movie is it does a lot of showing and not telling. Like, I feel like it shows how she feels about her purity and her vagina without like her like talking about it. Like these like very emotionally charged like scenes of her just acting and like not her just like emoting, not through dialogue. I just thought it was all done really well, and it never felt over the top. To quote Jamie, they just fuck sleeping bags in this cave.
Wait, what did I say?
When they were in the cave, you were like, they're just using the fuck sleeping bags in there?
Right.
Yeah, I called them fuck sleeping bags.
Yes.
Because they just left there, and I'm like, why?
They did. I thought that was disgusting. They were also
Yeah.
like, regardless of the fucking, they were just like in caves, like they're wet and
Exactly.
probably like musty, dusty.
Can't.
Mm.
Hated it.
I think something that this movie does well, and it reminded me of Spring Awakening, is that they just don't have the education. Like she is shocked when she removes the sticker from the vagina in the health book that she just doesn't have that education, and that's upsetting. As I mentioned earlier, I really like the smokestacks in the back of the town to show that like this adaptation, this mutation is coming from necessity, but helped by the environment around them. And I also think that, and maybe this is just me, but the generational. So you have the two generations. You have her mother's generation and her generation. Her mother's generation got cancer from it, but her generation got this from it. And like, I think that's an interesting, you can break that apart, whether that, that means that like we've just become more aware and less like ignorant of that, like not ignorant, but like willing to talk about this and deal with it more head on and be more protective than a generation that kind of just like accepted their place the place that society deemed them to have, I should say. I think that's an interesting conversation to potentially have about just that unspoken piece of this movie. Um, um, I love that the myth came from the hero's perspective. And they talk about, I mean, but that's how it's going to be written in Greek, where you're talking about like that is the monster and you have to overcome that and all of that stuff. I thought that was just an interesting way to frame a lot of that stuff. Um, oh, with the doctor, the gynecologist, I know I'm going for specific things here, but the gynecologist, when he tells her to scoot and she scoots out of frame, like, I just thought that was a really, really good visual interpretation of how deeply uncomfortable that all must be. Something that I do not have experience with, obviously. I just thought like I conveyed it, like that scoot, like it just made me more uncomfortable.
And they even put that like in the musical, which we'll talk like about comparisons.
Yeah, that's
again.
yeah.
But it was the same thing of just like, even in the song, he's like singing scoot down, scoot down, scoot down throughout the whole thing. But I think it's just, it's a play on that, but also just as women and who have experienced it, like that is, it's so funny because that is a
Exactly
thing that
what
just happens
happens.
all the time.
Mhm.
Like
Sure.
every time you go to the gynecologist, it's like, yeah, you have to just like keep scooting down. So it's just kind of one of those like reality things that happen, but then how they do it in the movie is really nice to depict like how uncomfortable it is. But it's literally like the reality of the situation. Like that's what happens all the
time. I also think that, so I have a couple things about this. One, so I have some, okay. I think that, okay, if I didn't know, everyone in this movie seems to know what vagina dentata is. Like, you know, like, so if I didn't see this movie, would I know it? Like, would I be in a situation where it's like, oh my God, vagina dentata? Like, not the gyno. I'm sure the gynos like have heard like, urban legends. Like, I'm sure that's like in the gyno circle. But everyone just seems to like know what that is.
Can any
quote,
gynos who listen to our podcast just let us know more about the gyno circle?
Yeah.
The gyno circle.
I like how subtle his taking off the glove is.
Ugh.
It's gross and disgusting, but I like that the camera doesn't like it. Just like it just is a part of it. It's not like it like zoom in on him taking the glove off and making it nefarious. Like, I like that the gynecologist is not nefarious from the way that he's filmed. He just is nefarious. And I think that you know, like, all of the men in this movie are not villains, are not portrayed as movie villains. They are human beings who are fucking disgusting monsters. And I think that goes a long way. It's, you know, except for the brother, the stepbrother, he's the only one that's kind of like played a little bit over the top. But everyone else is but I think that's done on purpose, because she knows to avoid him because he is outwardly this like monstrous person, whereas the other ones have this warmth, this whatever they have that's like that allows you to trust them. I think that's a big part of it too. So there's this mythologist named Joseph Campbell, who has this, he talks about how one of the most amazing things about myths is that every culture seems to have the same myth told differently, but all these cultures did not trade with each other. They, like, the Aztecs never met the Native American, like, maybe they did, but like these group of people never met these. The Greeks never met the Native Americans. This never met these. But they all have creation myths. They all have this, and all of them have this vagina dentata myth in every group. And it just goes to show like the power of this, the importance of this, and also the you know, the misogyny of it all at the same time. So I think that just to bring that up, I think that's really interesting. And yeah, I just thought this movie is really well done. It's not over the top. There's nothing too crazy about it. It's honestly, if you had told me that Wes Craven made this movie, just from the perspective of the balance of groundedness and campy tone, I would have totally believed you. This definitely has his ability to balance tone. This movie has that kind of vibe. I just thought this movie is really good. I think I understand if people have different opinions on how they handle some of the assault scenes and stuff like that, like not heavy enough, like, but that's not what this movie is trying to do. This movie is trying to do something different. Um, I to the last two things I'll say about this movie are a, I don't think I will ever understand. This is the whole nother conversation that we don't have to get into, but I don't understand my male gynecologists. I and maybe this is just from every movie that I've ever seen where like they're a womanizer or they're an assaulter. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I just think maybe the question I should be asking is, has media done male gynecologists dirty? Like the good ones. Have they? I don't know. I just, there's something or
Is there
I
sex
shouldn't say
about it?
male, I should say like heterosexual male or something. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. Anyway, that aside, I just wanted to say that out loud. I think that this movie, as good as this movie is, I think this movie could potentially use a remake written and directed by a woman. But
Okay.
maybe we got it in the musical. I don't know. I want to hear more about that. But I think that this movie is great and I really enjoyed it a lot. It made me laugh. It made me very uncomfortable. It made me think about a lot of things. But in the end, was never turned off by it. Like I've never felt like it was not accessible.
Yeah, for sure. I'll piggyback off of that because
Tell us all about the musical.
Yes, I'll tell you all about the musical. So when I heard that this musical was being made, it just had its off-Broadway debut and closed like a couple of weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, I want to be in this, but I need to watch the movie first. And so like it was streaming on Tubi and at the time, and I watched it. And the first time, all that to say, the first time I was very uncomfortable when I watched it. I loved it when I watched it, but just how everything was set up was just so uncomfortable. As a woman, as someone who grew up in heavy purity culture, like heavy purity culture, and like some of those themes were just so relevant that's what was unsettling about it the most for me. And I think you're right, Brian. I wish, hopefully, the musical comes to Broadway and y'all can see it, because I think that it does give more voice to the woman, and especially because one of the major differences about it is that she has like a Greek chorus of other purity women in her like purity circle. Wow, confetti.
That's interesting.
And so they're the ones that kind of like are her ears, and the ones that are kind of like guiding her, but she's guiding them, the lead character Dawn. And in the end, all of them end up being like vagina dentata, and they're all like going around and like clipping off male penises,
Oh,
so
interesting.
at the end it just kind of takes on a whole new life of female domination over the world. And so all of the girls in the purity group are fighting now, all of these, which I think is such a good change, is so relevant, all of these internet culture podcast men that so the stepbrother in the musical finds this group through a VR gaming thing, and there's like this head cult leader that's like trying to get all these men to be more men and take charge and blah blah blah. And so he falls into that group, and so by the end both groups are fighting. And so it's not necessarily like in the movie the stepbrother was in love with Dawn. It was he really just like hated her, and then through this group that he found through the internet, like just hated women in general, and was trying to just kind of like turn up the levels of patriarchy in a way.
Interesting.
So it's the whole ending is like just them like fighting, and then that's how she like chops his penis off, because they're all like fighting with each other. Another main difference, because Brian, you mentioned the dad being nice. So in the musical, the dad is the pastor of the church, and even though he is super nice
Still,
to Dawn,
still stepdad.
still stepdad, but he is the pastor of the church that Dawn attends. And he's nice to Dawn, but he like physically abuses the stepson. And there are scenes where he is like physically abusing him.
Mm,
And so you see kind of
interesting.
that
That's an
contrast.
interesting change.
Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting change. And I think it just adds to the level of like what the patriarchy looks like in the church and then what it looks like outside, because the dad is also plays the doctor in it. And so it's the same. Andy Carl plays both the doctor and the dad, who's the
Uh-huh.
pastor. So yeah, I think that that was like a good change, just to kind of really see like the leadership that's happening in the patriarchy with
Mm-hmm.
the church, and like Dawn following that path. And another big change from the musical is that, so in the movie, the friend who ends up being the quote unquote hero, and they have sex and that was fine, but then like it was a bet. It was a gay man who was a part of the purity group, and he wants to be her hero, but and they have sex, and he's the gay friend is actually the one who sent her to the gynecologist. He didn't know that the gynecologist would be nefarious, but he was trying to help her. And so then after that happens, she comes back to him and she's like, oh my god, this is what happened. And he's like, I'm so sorry, I want to help you. There's a whole song and dance, and the actor who portrayed this, I forgot what his name was, but he was fantastic. He had this whole hero song about how I'm going to save you from this. But what ends up happening is that he records them having sex like live on the internet, and it was to prove that he was straight, right?
Oh my
And
God.
to help her overcome her like vagina dentata. So it was like, I helped you and I also helped me, and now people won't think I'm gay and all this stuff. So that was like the nefarious plot
That's
line.
fascinating. Like
Yes.
using that, because being able to also hit on this idea of like being Christian and gay, like that's so
Yes.
fascinating.
Yeah, because he was the only male in the purity group. I mean, like Toby is there, the initial guy, but he's not like really, really a part of the group. He just kind of comes in and out. But like this, her gay friend was like a part of the group. And so it's like all the stuff was just like homophobia and people trying to call him out, but he's like, no, I'm not. And so that was his like plan to kind of let
Huh.
people know that. Yeah. So yeah, those are the, like just the major. Oh, and the mom was already passed when the musical started, so
Oh.
she's not in it at all. So that's also just not a plot point for her to get to the stepson, because the mother is already passed.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think Brian, what you were wanting is in this musical. So
Interesting.
hopefully you'll get a
Interesting.
chance to see it. But I love this. Watching it a second time was even better than the first, especially just knowing what was going on. Um, just some of my favorite quotes was, "Women have a natural modesty," and oh my god, I hate this so much, because it was like such a big part of just my life and existence, and just how they portrayed it. I think, like you said, Brian, kids being kids, and like the angst of it all, and like how you navigate that kind of lifestyle at that age, I think was portrayed really well there. um and yeah, I think that I love how she takes her power at the end of this, and I just think that it is such a well-made movie to talk about like just purity culture, to talk about like the patriarchy, and how the suppression of like women's rights, and how we are made to feel about ourselves in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. I just love that messaging, because when she like drops that purity ring and she's like, yeah. And I also love that even after the Toby incident in the cave, even though she has a moment of, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm not even pure anymore, it wasn't harping on that of like, I'm unclean and I can't do anything. It was just kind of like, okay, this is my reality now, and like, how can I
Yeah.
move forward with this? Because I also need to figure out like why the fuck I have teeth in my vagina. Like, that's more important right now
Yeah.
than thinking about like the purity of it all, if that makes sense. So I just like how that all like plays out. But yeah, love this movie. 10 out of 10. I really, really hope that it comes to Broadway. There's a great song called Modest is Hottest. And, I think it's Michael R. Jackson is just such a great composer of music, and it adds so much more camp to this already campy piece, but with even more messaging. So I think he just doubles down on the camp and doubles down on the messaging, and it just works. But they also been doing this musical for like the last 10 or so years. So yeah, I'm excited for it to like continue on because it's so good. But
Cool.
those are my thoughts about it. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, so I saw this like soon after it had come out. And it just had this like reputation of just like teeth in a vagina. And I've seen this movie several times since, and I I know like I feel like I always talk about how there's certain recurring themes in horror movies that like I recognize are just not for me. They're not interesting to me. And like really anything that has to do with like sexual assault or like revenge following rapes is not for me. Um, but I think the reason why I was okay with watching this at this time is because like I've seen it already, and I feel like I have a different relationship to this particular movie. And I think some of it is based on like some of the things that you've talked about, but like I think it's just a really interesting take on, yes, like how is she kind of coming into her own. But I was thinking a lot about some of the changes that you were talking about with the musical, and I have like mixed feelings about them, only because I think that like in some ways some of what is interesting is like the stepbro doesn't seemingly in the way that they're presenting the movie, that the stepbrother doesn't have this like overly negative influence on him, like his father kind of being abusive to him. And so it's like, where does all of this like rage and like anger stem from? And also like, when does he decide that he's in love with his sister, and like where does that come from? Like there's a lot of things that kind of are happening where in some ways I kind of like that there isn't seemingly like an explicit origin story to it. Like we don't need his father to be abusive to him to like explain why he's behaving this way.
Fair. Yeah.
And like that you can pick up on a lot of the subtext to like see that he's acting this way, you know, potentially to keep her at a distance because of what happened when they were younger, and also like because it's like this negative perception on like, you know, him acting on these impulses that he had, whatever, there's all kinds of reasons. So I kind of like that it's like left without that direct explanation.
Sure.
But I do think that like if you're gonna kind of, you know, take something and then like repurpose it into another medium, like figuring out how you make it your own and what new things you're bringing to the table. Like it's definitely interesting that they incorporated more of the religion aspect, because that's also another piece in this that I always found interesting is like there's even conversations between Dawn and her parents about how like they did things differently, and it's like, where does this influence come from? Like where is she, where did she kind of like build this relationship with Christianity and like purity culture and abstinence and like her sexuality?
Right.
Where's the influence coming from? This is just like it's already established, but like these are all things that I've thought about more and more watching this movie. It's just like it's so fascinating that we just get this character presented as is, and then she goes through a series of like traumas that shapes her, which again, I don't really like that trope of like needing to go through these experiences in order to like, you know, blossom like a butterfly, what have
Sure.
you. Because I think that that's like, I don't think that that's true for reality. Like, yes, we experience trauma, but we shouldn't have to go through that in order to like be resilient. Like, we inherently are resilient, and like, you know, we move through life, but like having to go through those experiences, I don't think is a requirement to, you know, exist. I do also, thinking about like the recording thing, like I like the contemporary update to the story in that way, because like recording without someone's consent like is another form of assault. And like something that, you know, is happening way more frequently. So like adding something else, like another betrayal and another trauma. And I was going to say something else about that, but yeah, it's like, you know, in talking about like sexual assault and rape and the themes in this movie, like she truly goes through so many experiences, such a variety of experiences of betrayals and abuses by a lot of by most of the men in her life. Again, with the exception of her stepfather, who seems to be like the only person who cares about her
Right.
and her well-being, even trying to stand up to his own son at like towards the end of the movie to like kick him out of the house, and then almost like gets killed for it. But yeah, like the, you know, there isn't like one. i'm i'm I always think about like what bothers me the most and like rewatching this movie, and like different things about it bother me every time, because like, you know, there's a lot like the bet and the dishonesty there, and like the, you know, her first experience being a rape and her trying to say no, and then on top of that, like then you have her being unconscious and him continuing to rape her. It's like there's so many pieces of this that like are very real lived experiences for people, and then all of them seemingly are playing out for her. The GYN one really bothers me, like not only because of like, you know, the experience of her first time going to a gynecologist and like um being spoken to in a really unsettling way, but like the him taking the glove off also feels akin to like another form of like covert assault where like men remove a condom before having sex without telling their partner. And so like again, it's like just a lot of things that I think about, and like how that also connects to think like if this story continues to evolve and continues to kind of reflect current society, whether other things that like are real traumas that people experience, and like how that might be reflected. So like I'm also thinking just about like how timely is this movie, or like how it fits into our time frame, and I think it does. Always, you know, between 2007, when I was like high school senior going into college, and like being concerned about what could happen to me. You know, this movie definitely like scared the shit out of me. And you know, like it's just thinking about like the reality of being, you know, a woman, like Nikisha was saying, and like these are the things that we experience and face, and like have to be aware of to a degree that like, you know, other people don't.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
But yeah, I think like I think something that could potentially not isn't like a gripe necessarily, but I do wish that there was a bit more explanation that like sets the stage for her connection to purity and abstinence, and like how we kind of get there, because that like I definitely want to know more, but I also recognize that like I think the point of the movie was more about the vagina dentata. I also appreciate that like there's so many penises in this movie, and not saying that as like a weird thing, but more of like you know, horror typically it has a lot more female nudity than male nudity. So I appreciate that, like, it's flipping that on its head. And
Yes.
sorry penises. Ed, get it? A penis pun.
Love it. Absolutely. Yes.
But like I always appreciate when, like, we're pushing boundaries of, like, everyone's always expecting, like, there is a scene where she's admiring her nude body, and
Mhm.
like that's the only time that we get of her naked. Like there's another scene where, like, every time she's having sex you don't really see anything. Every
Right.
time, like, she's in the bathtub you don't really see anything. It's really that one scene, but we get a lot of full frontal noodle.
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 We get noodles.
We
Oh
get
my God.
full
Full frontal
frontal noodle.
nude noodle. Why did I say noodle?
I don't know.
Um,
Nude and frontal, maybe?
yeah. I'm just thinking about noodles. I did eat dinner before this, so I'm not hungry. But yeah, anyway, I appreciate that, there's more of that, which I feel like also kind of like pushes the boundary in horror tropes in that way.
Yeah, because
I also, oh, sorry.
oh no, no, I was just gonna say that's so true. I didn't think about it, and now in you saying that, because you would think if the vagina has teeth, there would be some scene where you would like see a prosthetic of a vagina and teeth, in a sense. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
that doesn't
But
happen.
I don't even think that I think that would be crossing a line, because I think about, like,
Mm.
what's it called? The Omen prequel, and
Yes, yes, yes,
how,
yes.
like, that movie was rated R. They got one vagina shot and that was it. This movie I think is also rated R, but like
Hmm.
there was no way we were going to get an inside vagina shot with teeth. In 2007, there's no way they would ever allow that to happen. So I think that the best that, like, they were like, fine, but we're gonna show dicks, and like I think that's okay. And I don't need to see the teeth to see the impact. We're
Right.
still
Yes.
getting like severed penises, and we're getting like a straight up like shark tooth that they recover from one of the
Oh, right.
penises.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like you don't need to see it. I
Hmm.
don't need to see the monster in this movie. I'm seeing everything. You're showing me everything else, and it's enough
Hmm.
information for me to deduce that, like, the monster is here,
Yeah.
if you will.
Fair.
So I like that we're not actually getting that.
Hmm.
But I I I also find it interesting, just like thinking about like sex, like thinking about my own uh sexual experiences as a young person. um Definitely, I mean, also as a person with anxiety, i I very much like empathize with her experience of like this fear that she has when she makes that connection with the friend, and he's like the one who's like, I'm gonna tame it. Like, I definitely empathize with her, uh being in a headspace where like there's so much anxiety about it going wrong, and then when it goes right it's like shocking to her, and then
Hmm.
like trying to kind of make sense of that moment. That being said, I also recognize that like she was given uh drugs that like she didn't really know what the consequences were going to be of them, and
Right.
it therefore enables her unable to give consent in that moment either.
Right.
um but I thought that was a really interesting thing where it's like, oh, I like understand what that feels like, because like I felt that same like stress around it. It's like, oh my God,
Yeah.
there's so much stress about like losing your virginity or like having
Hmm.
sex when you're younger, and so like when it happens, at least for me, it was like, oh wow, like it's actually like, here we go. Woo.
Yes. And I would even add
um
to that, like, also the not even knowing about your anatomy in the first place. So then you really don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
it's a double blind side.
Right. Hmm.
yeah. And yeah, like just like being so unsure about like what's going on for yourself, and even like with some of the better childhood sex education that exists anywhere, like I think there's still people left with a lot of confusion and like uncertainty about their bodies, because not everybody looks the same. Not every body is functioning in the same way. Like there's
Exactly.
so many differences and things that like make it really difficult to be like, is what's happening to me normal? And like, is this like, oh, my thing is not like being experienced like that thing, or like my thing doesn't look like that thing, or like I don't have that thing, or like what is
Hmm.
that thing? So like it is really hard. It makes me think of, do you know that American Girl book that was like about the bodies?
I never read it, but I saw like a social media post about that
Okay.
book. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. It was like a popular book when you're like in elementary, middle school.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and it's like a cartoon book, and it just like it's like trying to help you understand puberty that's like geared towards like young people going through puberty.
Hmm.
Um, but from what I remember, it also was like diverse and like just showcasing a lot of different experiences, a lot of different bodies and things like that, which like obviously we need more of that. I mean,
Hmm.
now literally now more than ever. Um, but but yeah, I feel like that's also really important because like yeah, it's intimidating to like read or like see a textbook and be like, okay, I guess this is just like what it is, but like that's not going to be the same case for everybody. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I'm on a parlor talk about bits
I
and
love it though.
bobs.
Come, sit, have a drink. It's parlor talk.
But that's true though, especially because, and not to add on to the parlor talk, but because there are not a lot of studies on on women's bodies in the first place, like what we're already given is already skewed in a specific direction because we don't have a lot of information, and we're finding out new things all the time about how women's bodies work because they're just now being studied about women's bodies. And so just on top of that, it's you just really don't know what your experience could be, and just to have, like you said, a textbook just give you like one situation, one thing, and then you don't know, or your body might react in a different way or different things happen. It's just like that's definitely anxiety inducing. And so when you don't have enough
Yeah.
information to kind of subside that anxiety, like it only grows.
Hmm. But but yeah, I think that I continue to really appreciate this movie like as time goes on and
Hmm.
the more times that I've seen it. And I also think that it's like deeply funny at times,
Hmm.
uh deeply disturbing and like gross and unsettling. And I think that she does a really good job. Like it's very believable, like
Yes.
her this whole like, character arc that she goes through
Yeah,
of
she's
like,
really good in this movie.
Hmm.
yeah, she's just like I believe that she's someone who is like, really uncomfortable with like sexuality, and then like develops those like really intense attractions as you do when you're younger and your brain is not fully formed and like whatever's going on up here, and then is like kind of acting more like an adult than she actually is. Like there's a lot of things that I really appreciate about her performance, and then shout out to Hale Appleman from Magicians.
Yes.
Sure. Yes. Also,
I forgot that that was him.
I never watched Magicians. Is it
Oh
good? Is it
man.
worth it?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Okay.
We never finished it though, but it was really good.
Yeah, we have like
Nice.
5 episodes left. One day.
Yes.
I don't want to say bye to my friend yet.
I will say the funniest thing scene to me was in the gyno when she like latched onto his hand and like they're like swerving
Oh
and
my
like the
god, like
camera is swerving.
And
flailing.
and he goes,
Yes.
"It's true. Vagina dentata, vagina
Yes.
dentata." I wrote that down.
And just like the trail of fingers like leading up to her body, like that whole
Yeah.
shot is just
Mm-hmm.
so good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, something else I should mention is that when we finished the movie, the autoplay next was Piranha 3 Double D.
Oh yeah. I did think
Seems
that was
appropriate.
really funny.
Yes.
I was like, oh, okay, there's a theme, maybe?
Right. Also, did y'all ever watch Hand That Rocks the Cradle?
Yeah, I've seen that.
No.
Yeah. Because the gyno scene just reminded me.
They're
Mm.
remaking that movie.
I think I did hear something about that.
Yeah, I think Micah Monroe is in it.
Work.
Hmm.
It was a good movie.
Yeah.
I should not have watched it at the age that I watched it at.
No, there are a lot of those early 90s, late 80s horror movies that are like not full horror movies, but these like psychological thrillers that I
Yes.
should not have been watching at that age.
No, why am I middle school watching this? This is
Yeah.
crazy.
100%.
Yeah. All right, anyone have any other thoughts about this before we move on? No.
No.
Fantastic. It's just so well made. Oh my gosh. All right, so let's move on to our next section. Brains.
Tasty.
Tasty. Okay, so religion is a big theme in this, and so I just wanted to ask, why do you think it's important for other people to learn about other theories and other religions? Just because this one seems like very just one-sided in the purity culture of it all. And I want to ask, why do you think people are afraid that learning about other theories could like completely upend like what they have been taught, and think that it'll just like wash away everything that they've learned if they learn something new, or learn about a new religion or a new theory? Because it seems like, especially nowadays, some people don't want to hear about other things. They just have their own thing, and that's it. And I think that's also one of the things that is why this country is how it is right now. But I just wanted to ask your thoughts and opinions on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's important, like, in a similar way of like learning about other people's experiences. Like,
Mm,
I think that having, a more holistic, like, view of the world, that like there could be different explanations, different perspectives, um, different theories, different belief systems. Um, that people are perceiving the world through. And I also think it helps us like understand other people more when we open ourselves up to like learning about those other experiences. As a result, I think that there's fear, because does that then mean that people will like shift their own belief system? I think that's like what people might perceive
mm-hmm,
the risk, if you will, being from like, looking to other explanations to then like adopt one of them. And like, why is that a bad thing? I mean,
yeah.
you'd have to ask you'd have to ask those people.
Right, exactly. No, I agree. It's like, why would you think it was a bad thing? And are you not that secure in your own whatever to think that if you learn about something else, you just completely go over to that side?
Hmm.
But it's like, yeah, the more you know. Great. My next question is, can shaming a thing make you more prone to doing it? If so, why? And I ask that because I just think about, in this movie, Dawn feeling such shame about the thoughts that she has about sex, and even her eventually like having that experience against her will. Unfortunately, it's like she's shaming, in a sense, herself for that. So I just wanted to ask your opinions on, like, do you think if you're so much engrossed in like shaming yourself for something that you kind of like lean more towards it?
um I don't know if I feel like shame like pushes us closer towards doing the thing.
Okay.
I think shame is rooted in uh like you are viewing your own like character as bad, like your own
Mm,
person as bad for wanting a thing, versus guilt, where I feel like guilt is more rooted in like you made a mistake and you feel bad about making that mistake, or like
mm,
wronging someone. Um so like feeling something more deeply rooted in like who you are as a person, I feel like is more shame. Um Therefore, as a result, it makes me wonder if it's less about like shame about a thing making you more likely to do it, but perhaps it's shame about like the thoughts about it, like the
yeah.
curiosity even about it, and like feeling like you are then wrong or bad for even like thinking about it. Like
Hmm.
sex, for example, where it's like if you're supposed to be preaching abstinence, or like your belief system is rooted in practicing abstinence until marriage, but then you develop like sexual attraction for someone before then, like what does that mean? It's also like going back to the first question, where it's like, does that then kind of like uproot some of your belief system?
Hmm.
And is that like, you know, when there's tension between those two things, how are you then feeling about it when you're like, this value is so important to me, like abstinence and purity is so important to me, but also like this attraction is important to me. Like what wins out, and how do you deal with like these two competing values?
Yeah, which is hard because, at least from just my own experience with that, it's like you're not even supposed to have the thought of it. It's like your highest level of purity is that you now have surpassed your thoughts and
Mm,
your thoughts
Hmm.
are pure, which is like so crazy to think about now, like years removed from
Yeah.
it. But it's just so interesting, the thing of like your thoughts are not your actions in a sense, and
mm-hmm,
like essentially, though, with the language of like purity culture, it's like all of it is wrapped in one, and so it's like, how can you not have any of that tension,
mm-hmm,
because it's all like everything is spewing up in your brain, and you're thinking like, oh, there's something wrong with me, that the thought even crossed my mind, when it's
mm-hmm.
like, no, you didn't do anything, and thoughts just kind of like pop up out the blue. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but that is like such a good point, because that is something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, look at like obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, where you
mm-hmm.
have thoughts that like are coming up that you are deeply disturbed by. And it's not something that is in your control, but the anxiety that comes with these thoughts is so high that you then will like, behave in a way to make the anxiety go away as much as possible, because the thoughts
Mm-hmm.
themselves are so disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I think recognizing that like our we have so many thoughts all of the time, like literally so many thoughts, but the ones that we pay more attention to are the ones that like, you know we are giving those thoughts meaning. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean that they're any more important. Like I could try to think about like what I ate for lunch like 2 weeks ago, but like God knows what that was. I'm not paying any attention to that, but like you
Yeah.
know give me one of my insecurities and I'll pull it up right now. So it's like the weight that we are giving to these thoughts, and some thoughts are stickier than others, right? Like some like,
Yes.
are harder to
Yeah.
get out of our brains, or they come back like over and over and over again. But the same thing still stands. Just because a thought returns does not mean that it holds any more power. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
thought that like keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Um, so there's like all kinds of different um, skills around like how to not judge yourself for having certain thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
how to like kind of create more space between yourself and the thoughts you're having. Like if you think
Mm-hmm.
about your thoughts as like the the waves crashing, where it's like it's going to crash on the beach, and then it's going to go back out to the sea. It's like the thoughts might come and then they might dissipate, the thoughts might come and then they might dissipate. Like if we're kind of like visualizing it that way and removing ourselves from it, it kind of gives us more distance from it and space, and reminds us that like it might come again but it will go away again, and then it might come back but it will go away again. So like different exercises that can help us not feel as badly about the things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, and letting them like control you or take a hold of you. Also, just a reminder,
Hmm.
Jamie is a practicing therapist. Hit her up. Fantastic.
This
No, I
is
love that.
just a
Mhm.
taste
And
of
that's
the
just a
therapy that
taste.
you will get.
Exactly.
This just a reminder, this podcast is not therapy.
Yeah,
Yes.
true.
Do not substitute this for your regularly scheduled therapy
For
sessions.
regularly scheduled therapy, thank you.
Oh, fantastic. But great answer. And my last question, I would just love to talk about, where do you think the line is drawn, if you even think there is a line, between seeking help through religion and seeking help through mental professionals? And I ask this kind of as a my own experience too, of the idea that every answer that we need for anything could be found within our religious organization, and the need to not have to go out and actually seek someone who has degrees and has studied mental health. And so I just want to ask, like, have you even experienced that with people, or where do you think like the line can be drawn? Because like there are certain things that of course you can look to religion for help, but then like seriously go talk to a like a mental professional for some other things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like there certainly is like I think it's really important depending on what your like belief systems are and your faith and things like that. If you do find support from some kind of like religious person, um, whatever your practice might be, because I think what's most important is like that connection. And if you have any kind of like
Mm,
built-in connection already, if that's the thing that like gets your foot in the door of, you know, leaning on someone else for support, for example, or just like, not isolating yourself. Um, there are certainly things that like people are getting from their pastors and like other religious leaders that I think help a lot of the things that they're going through internally. Um,
mm,
Otherwise, I don't think that people would like continue to look up to religious leaders for, what they help people through.
mm,
Um, so I hope that people and like, I think there are people who are in therapy who also still like have faith and religious like values and things like that, that they're able to also continue to do both,
mm.
like lean on these different support systems for varying needs. um I think it's hard to say like explicitly like no, don't go
What?
to your
Yeah.
pastor for that thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's more of like, I guess I know what my lane is. And
Sure.
I also know that there are certain folks who look for therapists who share certain identities, for example, because they want somebody who has an understanding of what that experience might be so that they feel more connected to their therapist. Not in like a you're doing a dual role of like you're my pastor and my therapist, or you're my rabbi and my
Right,
therapist. Like
right.
you're still just a therapist.
yeah.
But it I think can help people just feel a little bit more comfortable and help in building that rapport when it's like, oh, like, you had the bar mitzvah, you get it, or like you've done communion, you get it, or like, all these things. And like not having to explain this part of themselves, an experience that they've had, a piece of their identity to someone who is seemingly an outsider to it. And like, does this person really get me? Can they actually help me, et cetera, et cetera. So I've also recommended to people, like people who like already are religious or like faith-based, like, hey, have you like, leaned on your church for support? Have you like, gone to synagogue and like connected with people there? Like use these pre-existing connections and ties to help you. Because I think above all else, like one of the most important things in support of mental health is connection. And so if that is one of the points that already exists, like use that. But I I don't I don't think that I would ever be like, no, don't talk to me about this. Talk to your pastor. I
Yeah.
think I would say what, again, I feel comfortable being transparent around what my limitations are. So it's like, obviously, I'm not like any practicing religious figurehead. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, my knowledge on religions only goes so far. Um, and if that, like, that's where I would be like, hey, like, it might make, like, the same way that maybe someone might refer someone to me, I might say, hey, have you thought about like talking to a pastor about this? Or like if you're already in this like religious group, have you connected with anybody else on this?
Sure.
And if not, like, do we want to look through and like find some places that you could potentially explore?
Mm-hmm.
So like that I think would be like my recommendation. And from my understanding, it goes the other way too, where it's like if somebody, a religious figurehead, feels like that's outside of their scope, then they might refer elsewhere. And I can't speak for any of them that are like, just kidding, let's keep this inside. I don't know what's happening there.
Right. I mean, I literally was gonna say it's like sometimes it doesn't go the other way.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it doesn't, like that's
yeah.
totally valid, and like based on some anecdotes I've heard, that is truth. So
Yes.
I can only hope that people, like, again, that similarly people can recognize what is outside of their scope. And if they can't, then I hope that they're able to recognize when people are suffering and are
Yes.
able to, like, prioritize the need to care and like empathize and have compassion for the suffering that other people are going through.
For sure. Absolutely. No, I mean, it's great answer. Yes, yes, yes. Two thumbs, a thumbs up. But it's so
All of your
interesting
answers,
to
not that they're ever bad, but tonight there was a lot to go through. I thought you
it's a lot
broke
to chew
everything down
on.
real well.
I know.
Thank you.
And in me like slipping in my own personal therapy session with Jamie, it's like what are you talking about?
As a reminder, this is not your therapy, both
Right.
listeners and hosts.
Right. Listen, I
Nikisha,
have an
you always
incredible
get a freebie.
therapist that I go to every other Tuesday, and she's great. And just speaking on you talking about like finding someone with connection, it's also you're just finding someone who has like the tools that you need, right? Like my
Hmm.
therapist is a white woman. And so like even though she doesn't have some of the same experience as me as a black woman, how she phrases things and how she connects with me like helps me out. And so it
Sure.
really is just like finding someone that can give you the right tools that you feel are beneficial, you know?
Yeah, that's the connection is the most important thing beyond any specific approach or like tools that a
Hmm.
therapist has. If you don't feel a connection with your therapist, it doesn't matter if they have like a PhD in like number one therapy style. Like truly,
Yeah.
if you don't feel like you can like fill in the blank therapy here.
Hmm.
But like if you don't feel like you are comfortable enough just to talk to them, they can't work, and there's no magic to therapy. So like if
Yeah.
you can't talk to them, then it's done, then that's it. So like
Right.
feeling comfortable, that's always my first thing in my like spiel with any new client is like, hey, if I am not the fit for you, like I will not be offended. The
Hmm.
most important thing is that like you feel comfortable with your therapist, and if it's not me, that's okay. Let's figure out who that might be.
Yes.
But like, I will check in with you and ask you for feedback, and like, worst case scenario, you can ghost me. Like, been there, done that myself. It
Hmm.
happens. But
Hmm.
I, again, in the hopes that like we find you the right connection.
Absolutely. And conversely, I wish that churches would do more of that instead of just being like, you have to be here. And then people are like, yeah, God took away my anxiety. And none of y'all have seen a medical professional ever. And I'm like, where is this coming from?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. Yeah. Excuse me, hello, where are you?
Hello?
I would
You
love
haven't talked
to
to,
chat.
yeah, you haven't talked to nobody. Like,
Yeah, you're not picking
you,
up my phone. Hello? I've been calling for 30 something years.
you know what I mean? Screaming. Fantastic. Well, that's all I have for that. Should we rotten tomatin this?
I think so.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
I mean, what do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I hope it's high, but I'm gonna say 84.
Okay, 84. Jamie?
I'm gonna say like 76.
This has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but
Nice.
the user score or the moviegoer, whatever they're calling
Audience.
it, the audience score, thank you, is 45%.
Whoa.
People
They're
like
like,
that.
we hate seeing dicks get chopped off.
The patriarchy.
Smart, original, and horrifically funny, Teeth puts a fresh feminist spin on horror movie tropes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty generic sentence, but sure.
But you get an 80%, so great.
Yeah. All right, what do you think this has on Letterboxd? As a reminder, Letterboxd is 0 to 5 with decimal points. Jamie, why don't you go first this time?
Like a 3-1.
Okay, and Nikisha?
I'm gonna say 3-8.
Whoa, this is a 2-8.
Wow. Haters.
A bunch of haters.
Drinking that haterade.
Full. Are you guys done drinking yet? Jeez.
Here are the top 3 reviews. At number 3, shark teeth and my vagina. It's more likely than you think.
Lethal.
The second most popular review is, this deserves the feminist revision more than Jennifer's body. There, I said it. That's interesting.
That is.
And then the number 1 review is, of course, she has a killer pussy.
The internet, man.
Oh, God.
People are undefeated.
It's fucking funny.
Yeah. All right. Should we do the 4 S's?
Yes.
Yeses.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horns 4 S's.
The 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. 1 through 10. Skulls is how well does this movie handle mental health and human behavior. Scares, how scary was it? Shakes, can you shake it off? Will you remember this one? And then suggestions. But Jamie, why don't you start us off with your numbers?
Sure. For schools, I gave this a 7. Because I think that her responses feel very human. Again, like, you know, understanding a young person and someone coming to terms with their sexuality while also going through several deeply traumatizing events. For scares, actually, I'm going to up it. I'm going to up it to 5. Because while this movie isn't jump scary at all, like all of the topics and things that are portrayed are deeply upsetting and disturbing and fucked up. And my only wish is that more penises get chopped off. For shakes, I'm giving this, actually, I'm going to up it. I'm going to give it a 6.5 because, again, I saw this movie when it came out in 2007. I've not forgotten like anything about it. I think it has great rewatchability. I think it makes you think. I have recommended this. Whether or not people have taken me up on this offer is on them, but it's a great movie.
Yeah. Agreed. I gave this an 8 for skulls because I think the people are peopling. I upped my scares just because you made a good point, Jamie. Like, I'll give it a 5 because it's deeply unsettling. Just especially watching it as a woman, it's crazy. And shakes, I'm gonna give it an 8 because I just really enjoyed this movie. It's so great.
Yeah, I gave it a 7 for skulls, a 5 for scares, and an 8 for shakes for all the same reasons that you both said. My suggestions for this one are obviously, you know, aside from Piranha 3DD, Raw, the Julie Ducournau film about that one's a little bit more grounded, if you will, less campy in some ways, but definitely in the same realm of figuring out things through a horror trope.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say it because they already said it in the letterbox, Jennifer's Body.
Sure.
But also Scary Movie, just for the campiness of it all. And Brian, you were talking about how the actress Dawn, like how she was really living within the tone of the piece. And I feel like in Scary Movie, like what's her face is doing the same thing, even though it's like
sure,
hairy,
that's fair.
She's living in the tone. Like
yeah. Jamie?
I also had Jennifer's Body, but the other one that this kind of makes me think of is Fresh.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a
I
good
almost put
one.
that. Yes.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fresh take.
That's a fresh take.
Yes.
Gorgeous.
Nice.
All right. Well, I think that ends our episode of Teeth. You can follow us on all the socials: Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky at Talk Horror Pod. And producer Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Oh, we didn't say hi at the beginning. Hi, YouTube.
Hi.
And then we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And
Thank you.
How should we end?
Hardly seems worth it.
I can't.
Great line. Great line.
It's just a great movie. Watch the movie, guys.
Yeah, it's really good. Watch it.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.